Hey team, I'm excited to share this episode with you today. In today's episode, we'll be clocking in with Mitchell, a software engineer at a FAANG company. Mitchell and I have had a long history together, but most recently, he was the CTO to the startup we founded together. Our startup was building a marketplace to connect couples with wedding vendors, and we got as far as interviewing with a startup accelerator, Combinator. And to date, that is one of my most proud achievements. We've since shut down operations, but I'll always cherish that journey. And I'm incredibly proud of us for trusting our wings and going after our goals. Before we get started, I wanted to give a brief warning. You might hear some dog barks in this episode. All right, let's jump in. Big Dog Mitchell, thanks for hopping on to today's show.
Of course, brother. Good to see
How are you
you.
doing today?
I'm doing all right. Just busy working, living life,
What's the weather like up in Seattle right now?
Kind of shit right now, but it's starting to get nice. We're entering that time. So I'm excited. Summer's coming.
Bruh, I'm trying to see if I can do a month out in Seattle. Carvana's not letting us do RTO right now or
Right.
remote, so I'm like, but if I can figure out a way to do 1 month and escape the heat, I'm gonna do it.
You should. I mean, yeah, we were talking about doing the same thing, except down in Arizona or something this winter. So
In winter. Makes more sense.
yeah,
I was
we'll
like, bro,
just
June, it's hot.
snowbird it. Yeah,
Snowbird it. Makes sense. Would you stay with your mom?
probably, or we might do somewhere downtown or something just to live somewhere more exciting. But yeah.
Oh, that's sick. So, wanted to let the audience know a little bit. Something that they may not know is that you and I, we worked together on a business a
We
couple of
did.
years ago. 2 years ago, March 9th was your first day, bro. 2023.
Yep, a couple of little tech bros trying to start a startup as it goes. Yeah, no, it was awesome. That was a good time. I learned a lot.
Yeah, something that I was wanting to talk about was like when you joined, you implemented Stripe into our wedding circle 1.0, and that week we got a subscriber. And I was
We
like,
got our first
there's somebody
subscriber, our first
believes, you
paying
know?
customer. Yeah, no, that
Exactly.
was fun. Yeah, ended up getting a few paying. I mean, that was just a nice, gratifying moment.
What did you think about our wedding circle as a whole? Like working on a startup, working on a business. Like what was your overall thinking?
I mean, it definitely made me like change my perspective a lot as a software engineer working at a like FAANG tech company. The approach that you take when you're writing software at like a big company versus writing software at just a small startup when it's just you and your friend, like they're vastly different. And I had to learn to adjust to that. Where when it's a startup, you just have to get something that works and just go and move fast and just we'll deal with it later. Those are yacht problems. You get the startup and you get the funding and it gets successful, and then you worry about that shit later. Like it's yacht problems, but like that,
Wait, what are you
I
saying? What is a yacht problem?
once you got the yacht, then that's the problem for the once everything's gotten successful, that's when that's the time to deal with that problem. Right now, you're just trying to get something working and out the door. It's a problem for future you if everything
Yup,
works
that's
out.
so true.
When you're writing software, you can get really hung up on a lot of little things that just like at the end of the day doesn't matter. Yeah, so that was like the biggest pivot that I had to make because every instinct that I've built working at a FAANG tech company is like dealing with a much different scale, and you got to make sure you test every little thing and but in reality when it's a startup it's just hey, just good enough, get it out the door. Yeah, right.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's tech debt for the backlog.
Yes, that's someone else's problem years down the line. If this becomes successful enough, then you hire someone to deal with that. But
That
yeah,
turned out to be me. I was like,
yeah,
"Oh no, why did I code it this way?"
yeah,
Well, one of my
yeah.
favorite memories is like I would push a PR and then I would tag you in it and then you would start writing comments and I was like, "Bro, I can't handle this right now." I was like, "I'm not strong enough."
Yeah, that's kind of, well, you deal with that. You're also a software engineer. So, I mean, like, that's a big part of my job now because, I lead a team and a big part of my job is just to review other people's code, which, isn't the most exciting thing. But yeah, it's a lot of comments, a lot of conversations. But yeah,
Yeah, it totally makes sense. You're kind of like the gatekeeper to making sure that, the entire system doesn't break.
yeah, yeah, you have to be the gatekeeper to say, no, don't do that, please don't do that. Or, hey, we need to just push this right now. It kind of sucks, but it needs to happen. stuff like that.
One of my biggest accomplishments was from during that time doing our wedding circle, our business together, and we had the Y Combinator interview together. That was the coolest thing to me. Like that was like, bro, I woke up at 5 in the morning and I got the email and I was like, holy shit, I gotta text Mitch right now. That was
Yeah.
so crazy.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that was that was the moment that it really became real because it was kind of just this fun thing that I like got to, after work doing this thing that I do every day, getting to do something entirely different, getting to write code with my friend, and then suddenly it becomes potentially real, and being faced with that was like, oh shit. And yeah, the preparation for the interview, I mean, just all of it was, yeah, it was crazy. It
Bro,
was pretty hype.
what did you think about the Y Combinator interview?
I mean, it didn't go well. It didn't go
Bro,
well.
I think
Yeah,
I
they
choked.
definitely.
I
Yeah,
choked, bro. It was tough.
I think. Yeah, I remember you did get a little. You You got a little nervous at one point, but it was fine. I mean, like I just, it didn't go well. We didn't get funding, but I don't know. I thought it was a cool experience. I mean, you know, definitely. At least what I took away from it is like what they're actually looking for, what venture capitalist firms want out of potential startups. I don't know if there's anything else that I ever want to work on or we end up working on or whatever the case may be. Like I think that definitely gave us a lot of information for how to, you know, proceed going forward. At least I felt.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think in the moment, and it took me maybe a year to really like grasp it. Like Pete, Pete jumped in and he goes, this doesn't really sound like a problem that needs to be solved. And I'm sitting there
Yeah.
and then instantly I choked. Like that was his first thing. And I was like, damn, you're right. It was like, I'm not trying to
You
solve
just
world
came
hunger. Yeah,
immediately.
I was like, yeah, I'm not making the next AI. I'm not like, but I think at first I was kind of mad about it. But I think my takeaway now over the years is if you want to be an entrepreneur or some sort of leader, you have to know how to word your product to every certain crowd to like advocate for it. And I think that was what they were looking for, if that makes sense. Like they were I don't doubt that what he was saying was a common question that he asks to every startup, and it's like based on how you answer kind of determines how, I don't know, confident or how much you understand your product, which I guess I understood it, but maybe I understood it from like the wrong perspective, or trying to pitch it in a different light.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if they asked that to everybody, but I think just he specifically didn't see because he talked about I just had a wedding and we didn't really have a problem, and so he just kind of had his own bias going into it, is how I felt. But I mean, you're coming at it from a different point of view. You see a problem. I don't think he's like I don't think they're all knowing, right? They just have an opinion on what is. But also, they're looking for a venture capitalist firm that's investing is looking for like high growth. They're looking for a DoorDash and Uber. They're looking for something that's like can scale in a way where when it comes to weddings, people are, they do it once and they don't do it again. It's
Right.
not something that you're going to continually come back to.
Whereas like DoorDash, now you can do 4 payments on your Chipotle burrito.
Hell yeah.
Bro, did you hear about that?
It's like Klarna
Right,
business
right.
model. Yeah, love it. I love it's.
Dude, it's so good. It's kind of funny, but it's actually kind of messed up.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a recession indicator. He put
Bro,
every
it's
he
like,
puts
yeah, I can't afford
a
my McDonald's.
burrito on layaway, and yeah, I mean they just make money by if you miss your one of your payments on your $20 burrito that they you know charge you an insane interest rate and
Interest.
fees, and it's a predatory business model. It's not great, but it kind of is just a sign of the times. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of nerve-wracking for me. I don't think I've really ever used DoorDash, so I'm safe, I guess.
really, yeah, I mean I definitely did during
Yeah.
COVID. Yeah, I mean I'm getting better at it now. Now that we're engaged, moved into a house, trying to, not live like a degenerate anymore. But yeah, I mean, it still happens sometimes.
For sure, yeah. I'm a big fan of just like going out and grabbing stuff, but I guess Phoenix isn't super friendly like it is up in Seattle, maybe in terms of like delivery services. I guess I don't know. I've never ordered. Like I don't really order Uber Eats or DoorDash, so.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of because like for me, if I'm like in the city, when I was living in the city to like drive somewhere to go pick something up is like such a because it's like okay, I could drive there, but is there going to be parking? And is it going to be raining? And is it gonna? It's like Arizona is like one big parking lot, so there's parking lots everywhere. So that's not really a thing you're thinking about. You're just like, yeah, I'll just drive a mile and whatever. But if I want to get something specific, then I have to like park somewhere in an adjacent block and then walk in the rain. And I'm just like, well, it's
It's not
midwinter.
worth it.
Like, I'm not doing that. No, I'm gonna
The
order it
DoorDash
and
guy's
then
doing it.
I'm gonna meet you in the lobby. And yeah, for sure.
That's so funny. So, something that I think is really interesting about the two of us is that we have a very, I think, path maybe that getting into software. Could you tell the audience what your path was getting into software?
Yeah, I mean, in college, I actually did start in computer science as a degree. I did it for like 2 years in college, and then I had an internship at a company that I won't mention because I'm about to shit on the company. And
That's
I hated my internship a lot. So I pivoted into electrical engineering and I pivoted into physical therapy, and I just kind of wanted to do anything else than write software. Because I remember my first day sitting down at a cubicle, just being like, this is not gonna be my life. But then I got my degree in electrical engineering and I worked for a company I do like called Viasat for 2 years as an electrical engineer. But during that time, I knew people that were software engineers, and um, this was probably like 2018, and I knew people that were able to work remotely, and they were making great salaries. And the part of my job that I loved as an electrical engineer was actually just writing code, which kind of like made me realize like, oh, okay, the internship I had was not representative of every software career that exists, and I want to get back into it. So I started spending my evenings just studying software, taking online courses, anything I could to get into just really full stack web development. And after about 7 months of like kind of studying in my free time and applying to jobs and interviewing, I ended up getting a job in Seattle for a FAANG tech company and moving out here. Yeah, I don't know. That was 5.5 years ago, and I still love it. So that was kind of my path.
shout out to Coding with Mosh because
Code with
I pretty
Mosh.
much did the same thing. Was an aerospace engineer for a few years, and then I was like, bruh, I don't know about this one. So I think Mitch messaged me like, bro, check out this website. And it was like 20 bucks a month or something. And we built a, bro, what is that called?
With like some
Mango. It's like the stack. What is the stack called? A Mern stack.
but Merseg, yeah, the MongoDB database,
Express,
Express.js backend, React, and
React,
Node.
and then Node. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we built that using Coding with Mosh website. I think maybe I was a little bit after you because you said 5.5. Oh no, we transitioned. I was maybe 1 year behind you.
Mm, yeah.
So wait, so how long have you been a software engineer?
Been
Uh,
5.5 years now.
oh, okay, 5.5. So what year are we? So 2025, 2019 ish.
August 2019, I moved to Seattle, started my job out here, got 6 months of pre-COVID Seattle, and yeah, it was, I mean, I remember when I started, I had no idea what I was doing, and yeah, just felt
Imposter
completely,
syndrome.
yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't even imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is when you know what you're doing, but you feel like you don't. I didn't know what I was doing. It was an accurate feeling that I was feeling. But I mean, I don't know. Any new person is gonna feel that way. But COVID allowed us all to like work from home, and in the field of software engineering is you know fine generally, unless you work on like embedded devices or something. But yeah, I don't know. At some point during COVID, just everything clicked, and I just fell in love with it more than I ever have, and I was able to get promoted 2 times in like 4 years, and yeah, I don't. Now I get to lead a team of people writing code, it's fun. I mean, it's kind of stressful. There's like, there's pros and cons, of course, but I think, I don't think I would do anything else.
Something that I like to talk about is the moment that coding clicks, bro, it's like you unlock the world. It's like
Yeah.
everything is just like, oh, of course. Or like, yeah, I'd probably build it this way. Or like when you run into something and it's like kind of dumb and you're like, dude, no, yeah, like this could be solved way easier. I don't know. Like I felt like that was my experience.
Yeah, I've had like several moments of things clicking, and I don't want to get, I guess, too deep into it, but like, yeah, I've just had so many aha moments that just make everything fall into place, and I just get even more excited to go even further or even deeper into whatever it might be. Yeah, I would write more code if I had the time and the energy, but as I get older and just as you just don't have as much free time and energy to like really peel back the layers on everything you want to learn. But yeah, I mean, it is my favorite thing to do. Yeah.
So like right now you're still learning about C. That's
Yeah, I mean,
that's your newest damn, what am I trying to say? Like that's your
endeavor.
newest endeavor is learning C.
Yeah, I mean, in college, briefly learned C and C++ plus plus and these languages, but at my day job, I mostly just write Java and JavaScript are like the main languages we use. And there's like some other smaller things here and there, but at an enterprise company, you're going to be writing Java primarily because that Java was the language of like the, I don't know, late 90s, whatever, early 2000s. It was like the language that like companies used and still use, even though there's newer, cooler, trendier languages. But I don't
Python,
know.
bro.
Yeah, Python. But I think, the more you write Python or the more you write Java, like you get further removed from what a computer actually is. You get further removed from like what a CPU is and what memory is and how that relates and kind of, spending my time getting closer to that, trying to learn to write C and, um, learning more manual memory management and working with the computer and things like that kind of interests me more so than like writing Python and JavaScript and Java and stuff. I want to get like closer to what a computer is. It feels like I'm getting closer to like truth, where like everything over a CPU is really just like some weird abstraction someone came up with, and we're living up here in like this abstracted layer when like a computer is just a CPU doing.
It's just a bunch of like bytes going on and off, and so it's like getting that deep.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like because I switched majors in college, missed out on learning some of the lower level stuff that I wish
Mm.
I knew.
I find that so funny because like the passion that you're speaking about is like so, I don't know, inspiring because to me I'm like, bro, I don't know, I'm slapping a keyboard, writing Python, I don't know. And then you're
Yeah.
like, bro, I'm trying to like unlock the matrix right now. And I'm like
Yeah.
but I mean what I think what you're talking about makes sense because like learning those things is the like absolute fundamental of like software, how computers work, and I think there's a lot of value in understanding that stuff.
Yeah. I think, well, even in I mean, just in my job, even though I've been 5.5 years with like the same team, I've probably had like three fully different teams at this point. There was like the team I had when I joined, and then at some point it slowly turned into an entirely different team, and then it turned into an entirely different, like people that I have now are like, it's just radically different. So I've seen tons of like probably like 20 different engineers come and go. And I would say most of them aren't that passionate about software. They come in, they get assigned a little task or a project, they do their project, hopefully on time as best they can, and then they get their next project and they just keep doing that.
Churning
And
those.
yeah, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But for some people, and it's exciting when I meet someone like that that like loves software and like they even outside of work, they're consuming software content, whether it's listening to something, watching something, reading something, learning. Those are the people that I enjoy working with and really connect with. But I don't think there's anything wrong with like it just being a job. If it's like it pays the bills, it's not a bad industry to get into. Yeah, that's fine too. But I tend to lean towards more more towards the people that like get really excited about,
Like the
what's
dev.
going on. Yeah, there's a lot of exciting things happening in software all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally true. So like right now, what kind of software engineer are you? Like there's like different kinds. There's back end, there's front end, full stack you were saying, and you were saying like when you first started you were like doing embedded stuff at your first company.
Yeah, I'm mostly a back end software engineer. But I do want to change that at some point because I've been doing mostly just back end for 5.5 years, but that's what I primarily do.
Can you explain a little bit about what a back end engineer is? Or like what is your day to day like? What are your responsibilities like?
Yeah. I guess the easiest way to think about it is like when it comes to software, there's the front end, which is what you, the user, see. So, like if you go to some website, you're looking at a front end user interface, right? Whether it's a website or it's like a mobile app or it's an application running on your computer or whatever it may be, that's the front end. But then the back end is everything happening in some server running somewhere else, right? A computer that you don't own is running code, and when your application is loading, it makes calls to that server to get data or to store data or whatever it may be. And so it's mostly writing software that runs on those servers that front end applications can call in order to get data or store data. And then, so those back end servers are running software that store data in databases that call other backend servers. It's usually a whole network of backend servers talking to each other to accomplish something. So that's the software that I write. A day-to-day job for a backend engineer, and specifically me, because I'm a team lead, it's a little different. But I would say for an average backend engineer at any FAANG company, so it's going to be a generalization a bit, but it's like in software you have Scrum, which is the practice of it's like the commonly adopted way of developing software, which is
It's
work
like a
is
project
broken up
management
into
concept.
yeah, it's like work is broken up into 2-week chunks.
Sprints.
And yeah, called a sprint. And at the beginning of a 2-week sprint, everyone gets assigned some work. And yeah, every day you have a daily stand up meeting where you talk about what you did today, or what you did yesterday, doing today, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, you have your daily meetings, you have your weekly sprint meetings, you slowly chip away at the tasks that you're assigned, which whether it's like developing a new feature or it's migrating some existing feature to something else or it's fixing a bug, investigating something weird going on that you don't understand. It could be any sort of thing, but you're just, more than likely, though, hopefully, if you're writing new software, it's building something new and writing something new. But yeah, for myself, though, I am more so in meetings, which is like meeting with people on my team, making sure that what their project, that they're on track with their project, that what they're doing makes sense, that as they're working on their project and they hit weird edge cases that I help them figure out the best way to proceed. Often I meet with like different teams because a lot of teams come in and want to do all kind of crazy stuff. They like you're dealing with product people that aren't technical and they want to do something crazy and they want it done tomorrow. And you're like, okay, well, what you're asking for is not even possible, or if it is possible, it would take like a year of re-architecting this thing. So it's dealing with a lot of non-technical people making demands on behalf of the business and having to creatively tell them no. And that's what a lot of my workday has evolved into, which isn't the most fun. I like writing code and like dealing with really pushy people in meetings is not the most fun, but that's just kind of what happens as, you move up as an engineer. You're involved more so from a you know
Individual contributor,
an
like one
individual
thing.
input point of view. You're like giving perspective instead of getting the opportunity to actually write the code, which is a weird thing. It's a weird shift because what I love is coding, and I don't love fighting with people in meetings. But I don't know. That's kind of a day to day though.
I like that you said that you have to come up with creative ways to say no because
Hmm.
when you tell me no, it's pretty straightforward. No, I'm just kidding. That's
Yeah,
so funny.
I guess well, because what usually happens is someone from some team, in India wants to do a thing, and then I have to say like, you need to make sure because it's not always no. Sometimes it is yes, or sometimes it's no with an asterisk or whatever. You don't just say no just to say it, but often the answer is no just because what they're asking for isn't reasonable, or we just don't have time, or whatever it is. But more
Or it's
often
not
than not, you're saying
prioritized.
no. And then they creatively come back to you with a response. Then you creatively have to say no again. And it just gets into this like interesting game. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not what I love. It's a thing that I'm definitely struggling with. That like the higher you move up as a software engineer, the less software you write, and the more you become like a people manager in a way. It's kind of weird, but
Yeah, because now you're balancing like business discussions, right? It's not like managing
yeah,
the team and like the current product. It's like more political a little bit.
yeah, that's kind of a yeah. It's like a weird thing that I had to learn is that like you say you have a passion for making something. For me, it's software, but for some people, it's like film or music or whatever. And no one's gonna stop you from just making software in your room alone, or writing music alone in your room, or making a little short film alone in your house, right? No one's, but the second there's a business attached to it, the business needs are more important than like what you, the artiste, if you're like a music person or a film person or just writing software, like what you want. Like I have so many things that I would just love to sit down and rewrite and redo and change, but like from a business point of view, why do we need that relative to something else, right? So, and the same thing with like film or music, it's like, okay, maybe this part of the song you love, but if we change it, it would, increase the listen time or the number of listeners in general. So I'm going to put your artistic desires to the side and do what the business needs. Or in a film, you maybe want to keep this one scene in, but it causes audiences to like hate the movie, so we're going to cut it. I don't care. So
Right.
I don't know. I
To me, that's kind of
I
like the layer of like a product manager. Like they're
I
supposed to
know.
kind of
Yeah.
like help guide like or be the balance between like the business side and like the tech side. But I guess maybe even more so on the business side to drive those features and drive like the
Yeah.
value.
Because like what I see when I see software, I like, it's easy for me to just get lost in the little things of the code because that's where I spend my time and it's where I obsess. And whether it's like written this way or written that way, like does it work? Okay, cool. Let's send it. But for me, I'm like, no, it matters. I need to write it a very specific way.
Right. It
Otherwise, I
scales
don't
better
feel
or
good. But they're
whatever.
like, dude, what? I don't care. And I'm like, all right,
You're
that's
like, dude, just get it done. It's like if if problem, then fix. It's like it's
yeah.
easy.
Yeah, the further I've moved up and gotten closer to the business side of things and actually like being part of business metric reviews and like how are things are performing, and like when you're newer, that's not as visible to you often. But or I guess it depends on the company, but for me it wasn't as visible. But the further up I've moved, the more tightly coupled you are to actually like business, and like that's the priority, I guess. So yeah.
As a team lead, have you done any like interviews for like new people coming in? All right, so FAANG companies are notorious, actually software in general. Software is like known to be really hard for interviews. Like every company does like 8 rounds of interviews.
Mhm.
Can you describe your experience as when you were interviewing for FAANG, but also like what do you look for in a candidate?
Well, I guess yeah. I guess a caveat is I haven't done external interviews, which is more so what you're talking about. I've done internal interviews, which is like transitioning to different teams within the same company. I need to get into doing external interviews. I've been asked to do them. I just don't. I just want to write code. So anytime anyone tries to get me to do something like that, I'm like, I don't want to spend a whole day interviewing. I just want to write code. I mean, I'm very familiar with the interview process. I had to do it. I know what it is, and there's also a lot going on with AI right now in terms of, people cheating in interviews. I mean,
Bruh.
ultimately, the software interview is like, it's going to vary company to company, but you apply, maybe you do a phone screening first with an HR person, but then after that, you're going to be doing you know, likely writing some code to demonstrate competency. And the way that they do that is like an online thing that you log into, and they give you a couple of problems to solve, and you have a certain amount of time to solve them. And yeah, more often people are just straight up cheating on them because of everything going on with AI. So they're going to have to evolve the way they do that. I don't know what that will end up looking like, but they have to change it because you can't use it any longer to measure someone's ability, so it's kind of useless. But after you write some code and hopefully you pass the little test, then you have an interview, likely in person. I don't know if they're still doing that. I don't know if that changed since COVID, but it would be in person where they would put you in a room with a whiteboard and you'd need to like answer questions, maybe write some code on a whiteboard. But um, yeah, and it was like several rounds of that type of thing. But once I met a manager that just really liked me, then he pretty much immediately, a few hours later, called me and said he wanted to hire me.
That's sick.
And then the next day I had a offer letter. So it moved very fast once it happened, but yeah, it's a it's a process that needs to evolve a bit because it's not really measuring the right things, I don't think, but I don't know how to I don't know what the right things are because they're so intangible. Like you want someone that's passionate and excited and loves software, but everyone in an interview is going to tell you they are, right? No one's
Hmm.
going to be like, I don't know, I don't really give a
Right.
shit about this. But no, everyone puts on their best face, and they all seem enthusiastic. But then when you get someone on the team, then they slide into their normal habits of who they
Hmm.
are. You kind of have to live with it for a period of time, and hopefully they grow and evolve, or you have to eventually get rid of it. But it
Oh
takes,
shit.
but you have to live with that for a very long time so it's hard to make the wrong decision. But I don't know what the right answer is.
Bro, yeah, I tried opening up Leak Code and I was like, oh my God, this is like so hard. But I feel like it's like a form of thinking. It's like once you do a few reps, like the patterns kind of start kind of emerging in those like Leak Code problems. Like,
Hmm.
okay, wait, real question. Do you actually use like depth? No. Do you actually use breadth first search or depth
No,
first
no.
search?
I mean, no
Like that
one's
kind of
writing
stuff?
search algorithms on their own. Like, no one's. That's the problem with it. I mean, it's just kind of shows your ability to like handle a complicated problem and demonstrate competency writing a language. And it just shows those, but it's not representative of day-to-day work. Like if I don't know, I was thinking about this
Or like
actually
how to
today of like,
think, right? Like how to
yeah,
think through a problem is part of it.
how to think through a problem and just like competency with the language. So I think from that point of view, they're like okay, but it's not representative of the work you do.
Yeah, true.
Unless you're like really getting into some lower level stuff or writing compilers or something, some build process that requires you to traverse data structures and things like that. But, I think what a more representative interview would be like here is like they give you an application that already exists and they say like, this thing is using Java version 8. Can you upgrade it to Java 17? And just watch
Mm.
someone like look at the project, figure out what it does, what are the libraries it depends on.
Like what's been
Okay,
deprecated.
how do I actually upgrade this to Java 17? What dependencies do I need to replace? Whatever, things like that. Maybe that's too much, but or like, hey, here's like a server running this code and this code calls this other server. We actually want you to migrate to this other service instead. So here's the documentation for the new service. Write the code to migrate this application from calling that service instead of this one. Things that I feel like are more applicable
Yeah.
to what you actually do in a day to day, but I don't know. At the end of the day, it's hard because there's just so many unknowns. Someone might not be the most knowledgeable software engineer, but they have the intangibles of like being passionate and excited and hardworking. And it's just hard to know, you know, how that's going to play out until you actually hire them. But yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Something that you brought up was about AI. Do you use AI at work?
Yeah, I use AI. I don't use it to write code though. I mean, AI has gotten a lot of like, a lot of hype, and part of that is like artificial hype of people that are have vested interest in hyping up AI are certainly doing their best to hype up AI. But there's also like a real practical use for it at the moment. I mean, I use it to ask it questions about like how do I do this thing, and then I like talk through things. I use it for learning. I use it for like exploring ideas and kind of like playing around with things and maybe writing some slightly boilerplate code, but I don't know. It's not very good at anything that complicated or that complex. It can do very simple things very well. If you want to prototype something and make a really rough version of an idea in software, you can get by with AI in doing that. But if you want to do something more complex, you're going to start running into issues. It's going to start misbehaving. So there's limitations to like what it can do, and I don't think in the next few years it's going to have any substantial impact on the software industry from the perspective of laying people off in favor of AI. I think maybe 10 years from now we'll see, but there's just so much complexity that like once it gets like a certain level of complexity, it just falls apart. It just starts hallucinating and writing insane things, and you're like, all right, I need to go. I'll take a
Yeah.
leave here. I'll go, but
All
it
right.
can get you
I'll try.
started and really um, help get you started on new things.
Okay. So we think that we have. So we think our jobs are safe for 10 years from AI, at least around there. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Well, at least I would say like
At least your job is safe. I don't know about mine. No, just
I was gonna
kidding.
say. Well, I do. I think the asterisk is like I think people that really love software and are really in the weeds of it will always be around, but kind of the people that just I don't know, just kind of like write very basic, simple code, just taking basic requirements, writing basic code. I could see that going away in the next 10 years. But the people that, really get into the weeds of things and there's a lot of complexity and a lot of challenges. I mean, there always will be someone technical required to steer the ship and to check to make sure what AI is doing is actually reasonable because it often just shits out really bad, wrong code. So you need someone that knows what's happening to drive that ship. But I don't know. I think 10 years, though, is like, at least at the moment, seems reasonable because it's already been like 5 years of this, I think. And,
Yeah.
or I don't know if it's probably been 4 years, I think, since ChatGPT dropped. And like, no one in software has lost their job over it yet. And they've kept saying next year, this is the year, this is the year.
Right. Right.
And it just keeps getting pushed back a year. Everything's starting to plateau around a certain level
Hmm.
of quality. So we'll see if they overcome that plateau or not. But I think for the next foreseeable future, it should be fine. I think we have bigger economic reasons that we're all going to lose our jobs than,
Bruh, literally.
uh,
It's funny that you say that because my job security plan is to output bad code so that AI trains on that so that
hell
I
yeah.
get to keep my code.
I mean, that is
Carbon, I'm
what's
joking.
happening is that AI is generating a lot of code that gets stored into github.com that then GitHub trains its AI on, and it's like this like feedback
Circular.
loop of shit where it's getting trained on its own product and it's getting worse. That's happened. Like the issue that I've understood they're running into is they're running out of good data because everything is so much of the internet's data now is AI generated. So what does
Yep.
AI have to train on? Like it needs quality data to train on, and they're running into that issue. So we'll see if they can overcome that. But yeah.
All right. Job security. That's the takeaway.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least from the AI point of view, we'll see.
Okay.
It's
Damn.
April
You're right.
7th,
Okay.
2025. It's the quote unquote Black Monday, so we'll see.
Bro, literally. Wait, Black Monday? What?
That's what it was being dubbed as from a
Oh, gotcha.
stock market
Yeah,
point of
bro.
view.
Like the stock market like tanked like 2 days
Yeah.
ago. It was crazy.
Mhm.
Something that you mentioned earlier ago about how you heard about like when you were transitioning into software, you heard people working from home and remote and like having all of these perks. Can you describe like what the perks are of being a software engineer?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, the heyday of software engineering, tech, Silicon Valley was like probably the 2010s, into like 2015 to 2022 or whatever it was. Like that was like peak tech, you know, there's like, ping pong tables and like, all sorts of just little perks and snacks and blah,
Energy
blah, blah.
drinks and like free
Yeah.
food.
I mean, that's definitely going away as companies are like, adjusting and trying to cut costs. But I mean, and also, a lot of companies are having everyone come back to the office, so the remote stuff is not entirely going away. It depends on the company, but um, yeah. So I mean, I still, I have to go in 5 days a week now, which isn't ideal. I mean, I like to work from home, and I still can occasionally. It's not like I can never do it, but the perks are depending on the company you get in with, you could likely work remotely at least sometimes, which I do. I'll travel to Arizona and work from Arizona for a week. I lived in New York for a month over the summer and got to work from New York for a month. And part of
That's
that's just like building up goodwill with my manager and my team and them trusting that like I'm not just gonna go to New York and not work. I probably worked more than normal, but so depending on the area of software you're in, you can work remotely, and depending on the company, go to different places and cities and travel and work. I'd say that's like the biggest potential perk. But, if it's a big tech company with a big, a lot of money to do things, then yeah, there's a lot of things they'll pay for, like, events and dinner and, little perks like that, fun activities.
yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely felt those pull back in the recent times.
The pattern that I've noticed is in 2025, Carvana mandated RTO, and since
Mhm.
then, our stock tanked 35%. So I don't
That's the
know.
correlation. There it is.
It's correlation. I don't know.
Um, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll
Yeah,
see.
Carvana had like a pickleball court back in the day, and we had like all
Mhm.
these maybe ping pong tables. I don't know. And that still kind of exists, but like I never believed in that stuff, to be honest.
Yeah. I remember when I joined, the people were traveling. They had like a whole summit in London. And I was like, maybe one day I'll get to do that. And then, like,
Right.
that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, they're like,
So,
oh yeah, we cut that.
right. So, a lot of that's being pulled back. They're really trying to prepare for what's to come, whatever is to come. We'll see. But yeah. I mean, not to say that we won't return there. I think software and tech is here to stay for the foreseeable future of humanity, right? It's not
Yeah,
going
literally.
anywhere. Um, but, yeah, I don't know where it's going to go in the next 20 years, but it's not going away. So I think it's, right now we're in a downward turn of like the business cycle, but there will be a time where whether it's 3 years, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, at some point things will swing back and
Yeah, back into like hyper growth again type thing.
yeah, yeah, things will shift around, and I recommend it to anyone that's like, I don't know, that just likes solving problems, that maybe is a bit more introverted, I'll say, because it's definitely a lot of time alone in front of the screen writing code. If you're a big extroverted person, it might be a struggle. I'm looking at you because you gotta
Oh, bro, no. My team is very extroverted.
really,
That's slash S. That's sarcasm. No, they're all
yeah,
like 100% of my team is very quiet.
yeah, yeah. So a
No,
lot of my
hey, it's
team
not a
is as
problem. It's
well.
not a problem. I knew this going into it, so
Yeah, which is a pivot. That is a big thing that you'll find is that at my job prior to being a software engineer, I was actually like very good friends with a lot of my coworkers. We would hang out, but then when I switched to software engineering, it's just socially, it's just not there as much. Not to say you can't make friends, but I've just felt it. And part of that's my own doing. I'm not actively trying to hang as much, but it's just a different type of person that goes into this field on average. So, that's a trade-off. You're not going to make BFFs at work. Likely. You might, but I
right.
wouldn't bank on it. Where you'd more likely make friends if you were in like HR or
Brand awareness team.
yeah, marketing, whatever.
Yeah,
Just more social
literally.
people.
Yeah.
So
As a software engineer, like what are some growth opportunities that you can have? Can you move laterally? Like, and then along with that, like what does your career progression look like? Like, is it pretty linear? Are you kind of like stuck with where you're at?
yeah, I mean, a good resource to anyone that's interested in tech in general or software is a website called levels.fyi, which I guess isn't just focused on tech. But I use it in the context of tech because you can see software engineer levels at different companies and their progressions. Every company does leveling differently and stuff, but the progression is like generally a entry level engineer into a level 2 engineer, which is just like a normal software engineer. This is like, you've graduated from being a beginner, you're now like competent enough to work independently. But then from there, the next step is a senior software engineer, which means that you're leading a team often, technically, and which also means that like whenever shit goes wrong, you got to get involved, so you have to be a leader. But then beyond that, it goes into the level of principal engineer, which is like often overseeing several teams or an entire organization, and trying to guide and coordinate the technical vision of an entire organization. And they're also dealing with escalations and things going wrong and blah blah blah, and like they write even less software, they write even less code. So the further you move up, the crazier it kind of gets in terms of writing less code, being more involved in technical debates and meetings. But so once you make, like, you could stop at a senior software engineer and have a full career as a senior software engineer. You don't need to go
Mm.
beyond that, but you could go to a principal engineer, and beyond that's like a distinguished engineer or a tech fellow, or these are like,
Those are like the big dogs.
yeah, senior principal engineer, distinguished engineer, tech fellow. Those are like, yeah, very very rare people. But some people also make the pivot from software into like management. They decide that software for them is like they don't see themselves progressing very high technically. It's just not their passion, and they want to go the route of management, managing people, managing products, whatever it may be. And that's fine too. People make that pivot. I don't intend to, but you could try software, get to a level 2 software engineer, decide I don't see myself going any higher up in this area. Let me pivot to manager, right? But yeah, I'm currently a senior software engineer. I'm happy where I'm at. Maybe one day I'll decide I want to go for being a principal engineer, but at the moment I'm happy where I am.
Yeah. Something that is pretty interesting as I've been doing this podcast is when I talk to other industries, this is not very common. Like they enter as a physical therapist and they are a physical therapist. Like there
Right.
is no physical therapist two or senior.
Yeah.
And then same as like nurse or like flight attendant or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And it's that has been very interesting to me because for me, starting out in aerospace, it's like and then transitioning into software, there's always been that, okay, this is the
Leveling.
next step that you work towards.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that is weird because it's like been so commonplace in every engineering company. Every engineering company that I've worked for has always had a leveling system. So I guess that's what I'm used to. I think I kind of like it because now that you have a title or a level, that way when you want to, if you ever want to switch companies or switch teams or whatever, you have a official title that can help in negotiation. Where if I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 5 years versus a nurse for 10 years. Like you could point to the duration as
Hmm.
your
True.
credentials, I guess, which is probably how they do it. But it is just nice to have a more, something more objective to point to
Hmm. The
in that.
competencies.
Yeah, if there is but I guess the negatives are, well, I guess I don't know what the negatives are. I feel like I've heard negatives of leveling systems
Mm.
of like, yeah, I guess the negatives are like when it comes time to negotiate salaries, they're like, well, no, we can't, raise your salary any further. You've maxed out at your level. If you want to make any
Yeah,
more,
because they're
we're
generally bands, right?
you're in a salary band, which I don't know. I mean, is that true of nursing? At some point you might max out at whatever the role offers for that
Hmm.
hospital. I don't know. But yeah.
Talking about salary, can you describe your salary progression as a software engineer?
Yeah. Um, so, the context of salary in the it's going to vary wildly based on the company you work for. If it's a big tech company versus like a smaller company, like if you're writing software for Apple versus you're writing software for a company that makes toasters and you're writing software for toasters, those are wildly different salaries. And whether you're living in Seattle or San Francisco or New York, or you're living in Arizona, like
Like a
it's a
place with
very,
lower cost of living.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's going to vary wildly. But in Seattle, as a software engineer, as an entry level software engineer at a FAANG tech company in Seattle, your base salary is probably going to be around 100 base salary
Okay, your
as an
base
entry
salary.
level software engineer. Yeah. And then, there's stocks on top of that. They often have like a vesting schedule, so they don't just hand you a bunch of stock. It's usually like, we'll give you this stock over the next 5 years as long as you're still here. We'll continually give you a bit more over time. It's not that much when you're an entry level software engineer. It's, you know, 30, 40,000. But when you get promoted to a level 2 software engineer, the base salary goes from 130 to probably about 160, 170 base salary. And then stocks will, again, especially with the stock market, how it's performing lately, it's kind of all volatile at the moment, but
Right.
about 80K a year in stock, roughly. So that as a level 2 software engineer, that total compensation is about 270 ish,
Mm.
260. But that, the stock is a big portion of that. And as that fluctuates, so will,
Yeah,
your
your
earnings. But
like
the
the
base
actual
salary
salary.
is like 160, 170.
Hmm.
But as a senior software engineer in Seattle, the base salary is 200 or a little over 200,000
Hmm.
a year. Stocks, that fluctuates as well, but it is roughly, it's much higher. It's, closer to 150 to 200,000 a year in stock. So total compensation is, 350 to 400 compensation. And then beyond that, if you do go on to be a principal, engineer, base salary goes from 200 to 250. And, you know, uh, yeah. So, it's a very good paying career. So anyone that's interested, it's worth at least giving a try. It's something that anyone could do at home, meaning like you have a computer, you can start learning, and at least during that heyday of like 2015 to 2022, you could take online courses and learn software and end up with a six-figure job, if you got in at the time where they were hiring anybody and everybody that could just write code.
Literally.
And I think there may be a day where that returns. I know right now that's tougher. Not that it's impossible, but it's definitely more difficult to get into entry level positions. There's a whole swath of just new grads that are just struggling to find a job at the moment, and a ton of senior engineers that are being laid off. So, I mean, I'm getting recruiters reaching out, so I know that hiring is still happening, but the hiring at the moment's likely focused on senior engineers, people that already have experience more so than entry level people. But, a few years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if the market for entry level software engineers opens up. And between now and then, anyone interested could start learning and getting involved in building a skill set that when it becomes marketable, you could make that transition and, end up with a good paying job. So,
I think that is totally true because that's exactly what you and I did, and um, I think that's really good advice for people who are interested in becoming a software engineer. And to me, I feel like a lot of jobs are kind of shitty, and so um, I feel like you should pick the job that pays the most. And software to me is not that shitty, but it's like the opportunities are there. Software is everywhere, and I think that it has a lot of growth potential.
yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I'm the other end of it. I love it, which is fortunate. It's very fortunate to have a passion that also pays well. So I'm very aware of that. Uh,
Bro,
but
you're a
yeah,
10xer, huh?
by some
Yeah.
definitions, I
Yeah.
mean, it depends
Yeah.
on the definition, but it's
That's
I don't know,
so funny.
obviously I would tell people to do the thing that you're excited about and love to a point, because money is a reality, but So if you can at least tolerate it, which seems like you can, then it's not a bad career path. If it's like, I don't, I'm not waking up hating my life, but I also don't like, it's not my lifelong passion. Like I feel like I would still do this career at a much less salary. I'd take what they'll give me, but I still love it. So I don't know. Uh, it's worth a shot, and you're able to start learning right now if you wanted to. I mean, the one website that I used, at least at the time, was codewithmosh.com. There's a lot of like intro and entry level kind of courses in learning different frameworks and languages and things like that. I thought it was very approachable. I don't know if it's still around. I'm sure it's still around in some form. I don't know what it costs these days because it was like 5.5 years ago or 6 years ago. But I mean, there's a million courses you could find. You can find free ones on YouTube to just learn basic Python or JavaScript or whatever to just get your foot in the door and do a thing and see if it is something you could see yourself doing for your whole life.
Right. Yeah. Mitchell, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and explaining to us about what it's like being a software engineer.
Of course, brother. Great to see you.
And that concludes today's episode and season 1 of the Clocking In podcast. Thank you again to the big dog Mitchell for sharing your experience as a software engineer at a FAANG company. And lastly, I wanted to thank all of the listeners out there for clocking in with us. Stay tuned for season 2.